The grand station floated in space like a jewel. Its silver walls caught the light from 3 nearby suns, making it shine with colors that Earth had no names for. Inside the main hall, thousands of beings from hundreds of worlds waited in silence. Today was supposed to be the greatest day in human history. Ambassador Elena Vasquez stood at the center of it all. Her heart pounded in her chest as she looked around the massive chamber. Creatures of every shape and size filled the seats. Some had scales, others had fur. Some breathed oxygen like humans, while others wore masks that hissed and clicked with each breath. This was the Galactic Council, and after 50 long years, humanity was finally being accepted as a full member. Elena remembered the day Earth made first contact. She had been just a child then, watching the alien ships descend through the clouds on every news channel. The visitors called themselves the Galactic Council, and they brought promises of friendship, trade, and knowledge. They said humanity had potential. They said Earth could join them, but first humans had to prove themselves worthy. 50 years of proving. 50 years of sharing Earth's music, art, and culture. 50 years of sending human peacekeepers to distant worlds. 50 years of trading resources and technology. And now, finally, the Council was ready to accept them. A tall being stepped forward onto the speaking platform. Its skin was deep purple, almost black, and its 4 eyes glowed with an inner light. This was High Chancellor Vorak of the Zinthari Dominion, the most powerful species in the Council. When it spoke, its voice echoed through translation devices that everyone wore. "We have gathered to decide the fate of the species called humanity," Vorak began. Its voice was smooth like oil. "For 5 decades we have watched them, we have tested them, and now we have reached our decision." Elena felt her throat go dry. Around her, the other human delegates held their breath. Back on Earth, billions of people watched on screens, waiting for this moment. "However," Vorak continued, and Elena's stomach dropped at that single word. "Before we proceed, new evidence has come to light. Evidence that cannot be ignored." A hologram appeared in the center of the chamber. It showed schematics, designs for weapons. Terrible weapons. Weapons that could destroy planets and tear apart stars. The label on each design read clearly, "Earth Defense Initiative, Top Secret." Elena's blood ran cold. "That's not real," she whispered. But her voice was too quiet. No one heard her. "These designs were found in Earth's military networks," Vorak said. His voice was sad, but Elena could see something else in his eyes. Something that looked like satisfaction. Weapons that violate the Council's most sacred laws. Weapons that prove humanity is not ready for membership. Weapons that prove humanity is dangerous. "Those are fake," Elena shouted, finding her voice. She stepped forward, her hands raised. "We would never create such things. Someone has planted false evidence." But the other Council members were already talking among themselves. Their voices rose in a wave of anger and fear. Some pointed at the human delegation. Others turned away in disgust. "The evidence is clear," Vorak said, and now Elena could hear the lie in his voice. But it was too late. The Council must vote. Do we accept humanity, or do we protect the galaxy from this threat? The vote was quick. Too quick. Every Council member voted the same way. Not a single voice spoke in humanity's defense. The decision was unanimous. Humanity was rejected. But it got worse. Furthermore, Vorak continued, "Earth and its solar system will be placed under immediate quarantine. No ship will enter. No ship will leave. Humanity will remain in their system until they can prove they are no longer a threat to galactic peace." Elena felt the floor drop away beneath her feet. Quarantine. They were being imprisoned in their own home. "You can't do this," she screamed. "We've done nothing wrong." Security drones appeared from hidden panels in the walls. They surrounded the human delegation, their weapons humming with power. "The Council has spoken," Vorak said. "Escort them to their ship." As the drones pushed them toward the exit, Elena looked back at the Council chamber. She saw something that made her blood turn to ice. The Council members weren't afraid anymore. They were smiling. Some were already talking to each other, making deals, dividing up something that Elena couldn't hear. Then she understood. This had always been the plan. The fabricated evidence, the quick vote, the ready security drones. It was all prepared in advance. The Council never intended to accept humanity. They were afraid of Earth's progress, afraid of how quickly humans learned and adapted. The quarantine wasn't protection. It was a cage. Why? Elena asked Vorak as she passed him. What did we do to deserve this? The Zinthari looked down at her with all four eyes. For a moment, something like pity crossed his face. You asked to be equals, he said quietly. That was your crime. The galaxy has an order, Ambassador. The strong rule, and the weak serve. You refuse to understand your place. Then you've made a terrible mistake, Elena said. Her voice was steady now, cold as space itself. You should have destroyed us when you had the chance, because humans don't stay caged, and we never forget. Vorak laughed. It was a sound like breaking glass. Brave words from a species that will be extinct in 50 years. Your solar system has limited resources, Ambassador. Without trade, without help, your people will turn on each other. Earth will tear itself apart and we won't have to do anything at all. The drones forced Elena and her team onto their ship. As they left the station, Elena looked out the window at the device that was being assembled in space. It was huge, bigger than Earth's moon, made of metal that seemed to drink in the light. The blockade generator. Soon it would surround the entire solar system with a barrier that nothing could pass through. The journey home took 3 weeks. When they finally reached Earth, Elena could see the barrier forming behind them. It looked like a wall of purple energy, growing and spreading until it surrounded everything. The sun, the planets, the asteroid belt. Everything humanity had ever known was now trapped inside that wall. Elena stood on Earth and looked up at the sky. It looked the same as always, blue and beautiful. But she knew the truth. They were prisoners now. The news spread quickly. Within hours, every human on Earth knew what had happened. Panic set in. The stock markets crashed. Governments held emergency meetings. Some people rioted in the streets. Others prayed. Everyone was afraid. But Elena wasn't afraid anymore. She was angry. As she stood in the emergency session of Earth's United Council, she made a promise. They think they've won, she told the gathered leaders. They think we'll destroy ourselves and solve their problem for them. But they don't understand us. They don't understand what humans do when we're cornered. We fight, we adapt, we survive. And someday, somehow, we will break free of this cage. And when we do, the galaxy will learn that you don't betray humanity without consequences. Outside, the barrier hummed in space, invisible but present. Earth's prison was complete. The dark years were about to begin. But deep in secret facilities around the world, scientists and engineers were already working. They had copies of alien technology from the 50 years of probationary membership. They had human ingenuity and human desperation. And they had something the Council didn't expect. Time to plan their revenge. The galaxy had made an enemy, and humanity never forgot its enemies. 20 years had passed since the barrier went up. 20 years of darkness, struggle, and death. Earth had changed in ways no one could have imagined on that terrible day when Ambassador Vasquez returned with news of humanity's betrayal. The first 5 years were the worst. Without access to the rare materials that came from interstellar trade, Earth's advanced technology began to fail. Computers that relied on alien components stopped working. Medical equipment that used Council technology became useless. Power grids that had been upgraded with alien efficiency collapsed back to old Earth standards. The economy crashed harder than anyone predicted. Unemployment reached 70% in some nations. Food became scarce as agricultural systems that depended on imported technology failed. People starved. Cities burned. Governments fell. The population of Earth dropped from 9 billion to 6 billion in just 5 years. But humans were stubborn. They always had been. In a hidden facility deep beneath the ice of Antarctica, Dr. James Chen stared at a holographic display. The display showed alien writing, mathematical formulas, and diagrams of technology that shouldn't work according to human physics. But it did work. The aliens had proven that. "We're approaching this all wrong," James said to the empty room. He was tired. He hadn't slept in 3 days. His reflection in the dark screen showed a man who looked 10 years older than his actual age. The barrier had aged everyone faster. "Talking to yourself again, Doctor?" James turned to see Commander Sarah Okonkwo entering the lab. She wore the uniform of Earth's United Defense Force. Though these days the uniform was patched and worn, there were no new materials to make new ones. "The alien tech," James said, pointing at the display. "We keep trying to copy it exactly. But that's not how humans work. We don't copy. We improve." Sarah walked closer, studying the display. She had been a pilot before the barrier, one of the best. Now she commanded Project Exodus, humanity's desperate attempt to break free from their cage. "What are you thinking?" "The phase drive theory," James said. His hands moved through the hologram, rearranging formulas. "The Council said it's impossible. Their physics says you can't phase matter through dimensions without destroying it. But what if their physics is wrong? What if it only works for them?" Sarah frowned. "I don't understand." James pulled up another screen. This one showed brain scans. Human brains next to alien brains. "Look at this. Human neural architecture is completely different from every species in the Council. We evolved on a death world, Sarah. Earth has more biodiversity, more environmental chaos, more challenges than most planets in the galaxy. Our brains adapted to process multiple threats simultaneously, to think creatively, to imagine things that don't exist yet." "Still not following," Sarah said, though interest sparked in her eyes. "Our brains process quantum information naturally. We don't even realize we're doing it. When you make a split-second decision in combat, when you imagine a new invention, when you dream, your brain is processing quantum calculations that would take alien computers years to solve. That's why humans are so unpredictable to them. That's why they fear us." Sarah's eyes widened. "So you're saying we can build technology they can't?" "Not just that," James said, and now he was smiling. It was the first genuine smile Sarah had seen from him in months. "I'm saying we can build technology they think is impossible. The phase drive doesn't work with their physics because their brains can't process the quantum calculations needed to control it. But ours can." Over the next 5 years, Project Exodus consumed every resource humanity could spare. Scientists, engineers, and workers from every nation contributed. Some died from exhaustion. Others died when experiments went wrong. But slowly, painfully, the technology took shape. The first prototype phase drive was built in orbit around Mars. It was small, barely large enough to move a ship the size of a shuttle. The test pilot was Sarah herself. She insisted on it. If her people were going to risk their lives on this technology, she would risk hers first. James watched from the control center on Mars base. His hands shook as he activated the communication channel. "Ready, Commander?" Sarah's voice came through clearly. "Ready as I'll ever be. Let's see if your impossible math actually works. Initiating phase drive in 3, 2, 1, mark." For a moment, nothing happened. Then Sarah's ship simply vanished. Not with a flash of light or a burst of energy. It was just there one moment and gone the next. The tracking systems went crazy. They showed the ship in multiple places at once, then nowhere, then everywhere. James's heart sank. It had failed. Another year of work wasted. Another dead end. Then Sarah's voice came through the speakers. Guys, I'm at Neptune." The control room went silent. Neptune was 4 billion kilometers away from Mars. The trip should have taken months, even with the fastest conventional drive. "Say again, Commander?" James said, not daring to believe. "I'm at Neptune," Sarah repeated. The drive worked. 1 second I was near Mars, and then I was here. I didn't travel through space. I just was here. Like the distance didn't matter. The control room erupted in cheers. People who had been bitter enemies during the worst years of the collapse hugged each other. Tears streamed down faces. For the first time in 15 years, humanity had real hope. But Sarah wasn't done. Preparing for second jump. "Target the barrier." "Commander, wait," James shouted. "We don't know if the phase drive can pass through the barrier. It might kill you." "Only one way to find out," Sarah said. James could hear the smile in her voice. "See you on the other side." The ship vanished again. This time everyone held their breath. The barrier had been tested 1,000 times over the years. Nothing could pass through it. Energy weapons bounced off. Ships that tried to ram it simply exploded. Even radio signals couldn't get through. Seconds passed. Then minutes. The room grew quiet again. Fear crept back in. Then impossibly Sarah's voice returned, but it was coming from a different direction, from outside the solar system. "I'm through," she said, and her voice was filled with wonder. "I'm on the other side of the barrier." The phase drive didn't care about the wall. It just ignored it. "James, it works. Your impossible math actually works." James collapsed into a chair, his legs too weak to hold him. Around him, people were crying, laughing, shouting with joy. After 20 years of darkness, humanity finally had a way out. But Sarah's next words changed everything. "James, you need to see this. I'm sending you what my sensors are picking up." The data came through, and James's joy turned to cold fury. Sarah had emerged near a council military station, and what she saw there made everything clear. The station wasn't defensive. It was offensive. Massive weapons pointed at Earth's sun. Support ships carried equipment labeled in alien text. James had learned to read it during the years of study. The label said, "Stellar Destabilization Device and Deployment Scheduled 2 years." They weren't planning to keep humanity caged forever. They were planning to kill them all. In 2 years, they would use those weapons to make Earth's sun go supernova. No evidence, no survivors, just another dead system in the vast galaxy. "Get back here, Commander," James said quietly. "We have work to do." Sarah's ship phased back into the solar system 30 seconds later. She found James in the conference room with every leader of Project Exodus. "They're going to kill us," one of the leaders said. "After making us suffer for 20 years, they're going to kill us all." "No," Sarah said, and her voice was hard as steel. "They made a mistake. They gave us time. Time to adapt. Time to innovate. Time to become something they never expected." James pulled up new schematics on the display. "We can build more phase drives now. Bigger ones. Better ones. We can mount them on warships. The Council has never seen a phase drive vessel. They don't know how to fight one. They don't even know it's possible." "You're talking about war," another leader said. "They started the war 20 years ago," Sarah replied. "We're just going to finish it." Elena Vasquez, now much older but still serving Earth, stood from her chair. "The Council thinks we're weak. They think we're dying. They think we'll be easy to eliminate. Let's show them what happens when you corner humanity. Let's show them what we've become in the dark." The vote was unanimous. Project Exodus changed its mission. They weren't just building an escape anymore. They were building humanity's revenge. In orbit shipyards around Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn, construction began. Ships unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen took shape. They were sleek, fast, and equipped with technology that broke the laws of physics as the Council understood them. Each ship had a phase drive. Each ship had weapons designed by human ingenuity and human rage. The Ghost Fleet was born. And in 2 years, when the Council arrived at Earth's solar system to deploy their star-killing weapon, they would find that humanity was no longer trapped. Humanity was ready, and humanity was coming for them. The Council fleet arrived at the edge of Earth's solar system right on schedule. 300 massive warships, each one carrying enough firepower to level a continent. At the center of the formation was the Stellar Destabilization Device, a weapon so powerful it required 50 ships just to move it through space. High Chancellor Vorak watched from his command ship as the fleet took up positions. In 2 days, the weapon would be activated. Earth's sun would explode, and the human problem would be solved forever. No one would ever know. The Council would simply tell the galaxy that humanity had destroyed themselves with their dangerous experiments. Another cautionary tale about species who thought they were ready for the stars before they actually were. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission," an officer said. "It's coming from inside the quarantine barrier." Vorak's 4 eyes narrowed. "The humans? What do they want? To beg for their lives?" The officer looked confused. "The transmission just says, 'Hello,' that's all. Just one word." Before Vorak could respond, alarms started blaring across every ship in the fleet. Ships appeared from nowhere, materializing in the space between the Council vessels. Small ships, human-sized, with designs that looked organic and dangerous. They moved in ways that ships shouldn't move, stopping and starting instantly, changing direction without slowing down. "What is this?" Vorak shouted. "Where did they come from? Our sensors showed nothing." "I don't know, sir," the officer replied, panic in his voice. "They just appeared. One moment there was empty space, and then they were there." On the bridge of the lead human ship, Commander Sarah Okonkwo smiled grimly. The phase drive worked even better in combat than they had hoped. Her fleet of 200 ships had simply phased into the middle of the Council formation. Now they had the element of surprise. "All ships, this is Commander Okonkwo," she said into the fleet-wide channel. "Broadcast the message on all frequencies. Let the whole galaxy hear us." Her communication officer nodded and activated the transmission. A hologram appeared in the center of every Council ship, every station, every inhabited world within 100 light years. The hologram showed Elena Vasquez, older now but still fierce, still standing. "People of the galaxy," Elena said. 20 years ago, the Galactic Council imprisoned humanity in our own solar system. They fabricated evidence to justify it. They told you we were dangerous, they lied. And now we have discovered why. They plan to murder us, all of us. 9 billion human lives erased to hide their crime. The hologram changed, showing recordings from Sarah's scout mission 2 years ago, the stellar destabilization weapon, the deployment schedule, the communications between Council officials discussing the genocide. But humanity survived, Elena continued. We adapted. We innovated. And now we're here to deliver a message. The Council's tyranny ends today. To all Council military vessels, you have one chance to surrender. Power down your weapons and prepare to be boarded. If you refuse, you will be disabled. We will not kill you unless you force us. But make no mistake, your choice is surrender or defeat. There is no third option. Vorax stared at the hologram in disbelief. Then rage filled his features. This is an insult. We have 300 ships. They have only 200. And they're tiny. Fire all weapons. Destroy them. The Council fleet opened fire. Energy beams and missiles filled space with deadly light. But the human ships simply weren't there anymore. They phased out of existence a microsecond before the weapons arrived, then phased back in somewhere else. Impossible, Vorax screamed. Our targeting computers can't lock on. They're breaking the laws of physics. No, one of his officers said quietly. They're breaking our understanding of physics. There's a difference. The human ships began their counterattack. They didn't target life support or crew quarters. They specifically aimed at weapon systems, engines, and communications. Council ships found themselves crippled, unable to fight or run, but with their crews unharmed. They're trying not to kill us, the officer observed. They could destroy us easily, but they're only disabling our ships. One Council captain commanding a destroyer decided to surrender. She powered down her weapons and sent a transmission accepting the human terms. Within minutes, human boarding teams phased directly onto her bridge. They wore armor that looked almost alien in design, and they carried weapons, but they didn't aim them at anyone. Captain, the lead human said, his voice calm and professional. Please order your crew to gather in the common areas. You will not be harmed. You're now prisoners of war and will be treated according to the Geneva Conventions. The what conventions? The captain asked. Rules of war from Earth, the human explained. You'll be fed, given medical care, and treated with dignity, unlike what your Council planned for us. Across the battlefield, more Council ships surrendered. Some fought to the end and found their ships disabled anyway. The human phase drive technology made conventional combat impossible. How do you fight an enemy who can be anywhere and nowhere at the same time? Within 6 hours, the entire Council fleet was captured or destroyed. Not a single human ship was lost. The stellar destabilization weapon was seized intact, along with all the plans and evidence of the Council's genocide plot. Vorax sat in his command chair, his ship dead in space, his fleet defeated. Human soldiers stood on his bridge, waiting for him to surrender. He couldn't believe it. 300 ships against 200, and they lost. It shouldn't have been possible. How? He asked when Sarah Okonkwo herself phased onto his bridge. How did you do this? Sarah looked at him with cold eyes. You wanted to know what makes humans dangerous? It's not our weapons. It's not our ships. It's that we never accept what you tell us is impossible. You said phase drive technology couldn't work. You were wrong. You said we would destroy ourselves. You were wrong. You said you could cage us forever. You were very, very wrong. You'll never defeat the Council, Vorax said. We have thousands of ships, millions of soldiers. This was just one fleet. Then you'll lose thousands of ships, Sarah replied, and every species in the galaxy will watch you lose them. We're broadcasting everything, Chancellor. Every battle, every surrender, every piece of evidence of your crimes. The whole galaxy is watching us win, and she was right. On 1,000 worlds, billions of beings watched the battle recordings. They saw the mighty Council fleet defeated in hours, They saw human ships that moved like ghosts. They saw the evidence of planned genocide. And they began to ask questions. On the Velksani homeworld, an old woman watched the broadcast with tears in her eyes. 2,000 years ago, her ancestors had rebelled against the Council. The Council had bombarded their world until they surrendered. Her people had lived as second-class citizens ever since, forbidden from having their own military or advanced technology. They did it, she whispered. Someone finally stood up to them. And won. She wasn't alone. Across the galaxy, in the lower levels of the rigid caste system that the Council enforced, people watched and hoped. If humanity could defeat the Council, maybe they could too. The human fleet didn't stop at one victory. They identified Council military installations across a dozen systems and struck them systematically. Each time they broadcast their attacks. Each time they offered surrender. Each time they tried to minimize casualties. This confused many Council species. In their experience, rebellions were brutal and bloody. Rebels destroyed everything in rage. But humans were different. They were angry, yes. Furious even. But they were also controlled. They had rules. They had limits. They fight like they expect to live with us afterward, one Council admiral observed before his station surrendered. They're not trying to destroy the Council. They're trying to change it. At the Battle of Kepler Station, the Council made their largest stand. They assembled 3,000 warships, pulling vessels from every sector. This was their line in the sand. If the humans could be stopped, it would be here. The human ghost fleet arrived with only 200 ships. The Council commanders felt confident. 15-to-1 odds. Surely numbers would matter now. They were wrong. The battle lasted 12 hours. The human ships phased through the Council formation like ghosts, striking from impossible angles, disappearing before counterattacks could land. They used tactics that no Council species had ever imagined, because their understanding of space combat was built on old assumptions about how ships could move. When it was over, 3,000 Council ships were disabled or destroyed. The humans lost 18 ships, and even those crews were mostly evacuated before the vessels were destroyed. The survivors spread across the galaxy with stories of the Ghost Fleet, stories that grew with each telling. Some said the human ships could read minds. Others claimed they could see the future. The truth was simpler but just as terrifying. Humanity had developed technology that made the Council's military might obsolete. In his private chambers on Centris Prime, Vorak watched the reports coming in. System after system, station after station, fleet after fleet, all defeated, all captured, all exposed. The Council was losing. For the first time in 10,000 years, they were actually losing a war. And the worst part was that the humans weren't even trying to conquer anyone. They were just removing the Council's ability to threaten them. Every military asset destroyed, every weapon seized, every secret revealed. The message appeared simultaneously on every civilian network in the galaxy. It bypassed government filters, corporate censors, and military firewalls. Within seconds, billions of beings across thousands of worlds were reading the same thing. Citizens of the galaxy. This is humanity. We have something to show you. What followed was the largest data breach in galactic history. Humanity had spent months infiltrating Council networks, copying files, gathering evidence. Now they released everything at once. The files showed genocides that were erased from history, species that refused to accept Council authority, wiped out to the last child, planets that resisted economic control, their atmospheres poisoned until they surrendered, rebellions that were crushed with such brutality that entire regions learned not to resist. But it went deeper than that. The files showed how the Council maintained control, technology suppression protocols that kept younger species dependent on Council corporations, economic sanctions that punished entire worlds for the actions of a few, educational programs designed to teach species that the Council's rule was natural and good. The caste system that governed galactic society wasn't based on merit or wisdom. It was based on who had power 10,000 years ago and who wanted to keep that power forever. On the industrial world of Korthan, workers stopped their shifts to read the files. Their species, the Korthani, had been members of the Council for 8,000 years. But they were low caste. They did the mining, the manufacturing, the dangerous work that kept the galaxy running. They were told this was because their species wasn't smart enough for higher work. The files showed the truth. 3,000 years ago, the Korthani had developed revolutionary computing technology. The Council deemed it a threat. They destroyed the technology, killed the scientists, and rewrote Korthani history to make them believe they had always been workers. For 3,000 years, an entire species had been lied to about their own past. The workers read, and they got angry. On the academic world of Thessia, scholars who spent their lives teaching council-approved history suddenly found that history was fiction. The wars they taught about hadn't happened the way the books said. The council wasn't founded on principles of harmony and cooperation. It was founded when 12 powerful species conquered everyone else and needed a government structure to maintain their control. The scholars read, and they questioned everything. On the wealthy world of Centris Prime, in the highest towers where the council elite lived, parents read files about experiments done on lower caste children, medical testing without consent, genetic manipulation to make certain species more docile, educational implants that limited creative thinking. Even among the ruling class, there were those with consciences. They read, and some of them felt shame. Ambassador Elena Vasquez sat in the command center on the human flagship, watching the galaxy react to the truth. Data streams showed riots on industrial worlds, protests on academic planets, government buildings burning, council officials being dragged from their offices by angry crowds. "Is this what we wanted?" Dr. James Chen asked. He stood beside her, looking at the chaos on the screens. "People are dying in those riots." "People were already dying," Elena replied quietly. "They've been dying for 10,000 years. At least now they know why." Sarah Okonkwo entered the command center, still wearing her combat armor. The Ghost Fleet was still operating, still striking council military targets. But now they had a new mission: protecting the rebellions. "We're getting requests for help from 40 different species," Sarah said. "The council is sending military forces to crush the uprisings. Some planetary governors are threatening to use orbital bombardment on their own people." "Then we stop them," Elena said. "Every council military ship that tries to attack civilians gets disabled. Every weapon pointed at protesters gets destroyed. We wanted to change the galaxy. This is what change looks like." On the planet Velxar, the site of the ancient rebellion that was crushed 2,000 years ago, something remarkable happened. The old woman who had watched humanity's first victory stood in the capital square, with a crowd of millions behind her. "My name is Sora," she said into a microphone, her voice carried by speakers across the city. "My ancestors fought for freedom 2 millennia ago. The council burned our world for it. They took our weapons, our ships, our right to defend ourselves. They made us servants. They told us it was for our own good." She held up a data pad showing the files humanity had released. "But this shows the truth. We weren't dangerous. We were competition. Our ancestors had developed faster-than-light technology that was better than the council's. They couldn't let us keep it. So they destroyed us and rewrote our history." The crowd roared with anger and grief. 2,000 years of lies exposed in a day. "Humanity showed us we were right to fight," Sora continued. "They showed us that the council can be defeated. And they're offering to help us. Not to rule us, not to control us, but to help us stand on our own feet." A human ship appeared in the sky above the square. It phased into existence like a ghost, hovering silently. A hologram projected from the ship showing Commander Okonkwo. "People of Velxar," Sarah said. 22 years ago the council caged us. They thought we would die. Instead we became something they feared. Now we offer you the same chance. We've brought technical schematics for phase drive technology. We've brought medical supplies and food. We've brought weapons to defend yourselves. And we've brought a promise: if the council tries to hurt you again, they'll have to go through us first." The crowd erupted in cheers. But not everyone was celebrating. On a council warship approaching Velxar, Admiral Tronix watched the scene with growing horror. Tronix had been a loyal council officer for 60 years. He believed in the system. He thought the council brought order to chaos, civilization to barbarism. But the files humanity released showed him orders he had never seen before. Orders to use chemical weapons on civilian populations. Orders to destroy agricultural centers to starve rebellious worlds into submission. Orders signed by High Chancellor Vorak and approved by the full council. Tronix's mission was to bombard Velxar from orbit if they didn't surrender. He looked at his crew. They had all seen the files too. They were loyal, but they were also questioning. "Sir," his weapons officer said quietly, "I have a wife and children on Korthan. The files say the Council has been testing biological weapons on Corthani workers. My family might have been test subjects. Other crew members were nodding. They all had families. They all had species that the Council had exploited or controlled. "What are your orders, sir?" the weapons officer asked. Tronix looked at Velxar on the screen. He saw millions of people in the square, people who just wanted to be free. He saw the human ship protecting them, and he made a decision that would have been unthinkable a month ago. "Power down all weapons," Tronix said. "Send a message to the human fleet. Tell them we surrender." His crew stared at him in shock. "That's mutiny, sir," one officer said. "No," Tronix replied. "Mutiny is refusing illegal orders, and every order we've received from the Council in the past month has been illegal under the Council's own laws. We're supposed to protect civilians, not murder them." The crew looked at each other, then one by one they nodded. The weapons powered down. The surrender message was sent. Within hours, 12 more Council ships surrendered without fighting. Their crews defected, bringing their vessels over to the human side. Some brought information, others brought supplies. All brought stories of things they had been ordered to do, things that haunted them. The Council's military wasn't just losing battles, it was falling apart. High Chancellor Vorak sat in the Emergency Council session, surrounded by the leaders of the 12 founding species. They had ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years. Now their empire was crumbling in weeks. "We need to negotiate," one of the councillors said. "The humans have proven their point. We can't beat them militarily. Negotiate," Vorak shouted. "They're destroying everything we've built." "Everything we built on lies," another councillor said quietly. This was Elder Sareth of the Thessian people, one of the oldest species in the Council. "I've been reading the files they released. I knew some of the history was adjusted for political reasons, but I didn't know how much. We're not the heroes we pretend to be. It doesn't matter," Vorak insisted. "Without the Council, the galaxy will descend into chaos." "It's already in chaos," Sareth said, "because we tried to control everything. The humans aren't trying to destroy the Council. They're trying to destroy our monopoly on power. There's a difference." The debate raged for hours, but outside the Council chambers something was happening that would make their arguments meaningless. Humanity had activated the weapon they had captured from the Council fleet. The stellar destabilization device, the weapon meant to murder Earth, but they didn't aim it at anyone. Instead, they took it to a dead system far from any inhabited worlds. Every sensor in the galaxy watched as humanity activated the weapon and destroyed a star. The explosion was visible for 100 light-years, and with it, humanity sent a message. "This is the weapon the Council planned to use on us. We could use it on them. We could destroy their worlds like they planned to destroy ours, but we won't, because we're not them." The Constitutional Convention was held on a neutral station that humanity had built in deep space. It was designed to accommodate every species in the galaxy, with chambers that could support different atmospheres, gravities, and environmental needs. 10,000 delegates from 300 species gathered there, including species that the old Council had never allowed to speak. Elena Vasquez stood at the entrance, greeting delegates as they arrived. She was 70 years old now. The stress of the past 23 years showed in her face. But her eyes were still sharp, still determined. Ambassador Vasquez, a Velxani delegate, said, approaching her. It was Sora, the old woman who had led the uprising on Velxar. "Thank you for inviting us. For 2,000 years we had no voice. Now we stand as equals." "You were always equals," Elena replied. "The Council just convinced you otherwise." The convention lasted 6 months. Every species sent their best minds, legal scholars, philosophers, historians, scientists. They debated, argued, and sometimes fought. But slowly a new structure emerged. The new Galactic Federation would be different from the Council. Every species would have one vote, regardless of their military power or economic strength. Technology would not be suppressed. Instead, it would be shared freely, with protections to prevent any one species from gaining overwhelming advantage. There would be no caste system. No species would be classified as higher or lower. Instead, there would be cooperation based on mutual benefit. Most importantly, there would be accountability. Leaders could be removed for corruption or abuse of power. Laws would apply equally to everyone, and there would be a constitutional court, staffed by judges from many species. to ensure the rules were followed. But first came the trials. High Chancellor Vorak stood in a courtroom designed by humans, facing charges of genocide, conspiracy, and crimes against sapient beings. The judges were not all human. They came from 12 different species, including some from the old council races. The chief judge was Elder Sareth of Thessia, who had served on the council before defecting during the war. She looked at Vorak with sadness rather than anger. "Chancellor Vorak," she said, "you are charged with planning the genocide of humanity. You are charged with suppressing technology that could have saved billions of lives across the galaxy. You are charged with maintaining a system of oppression that caused suffering for thousands of years. How do you plead?" Vorak stood silent for a long moment. He could lie. He could claim he was following orders or protecting the galaxy. But the evidence was overwhelming. The files humanity released showed everything. "Guilty," he said quietly, "to all charges." A murmur went through the courtroom. Many had expected him to fight to the end. "Why did you do it?" Sareth asked. "You were educated. You were intelligent. You knew the suffering your policies caused." "Why?" Vorak looked up at the judges. "Because I believed the system was good. The council brought stability after centuries of war. We stopped species from destroying each other. We thought we were protecting the galaxy from chaos. By creating a different kind of chaos," Sareth said. "By making billions of beings suffer under your control." "Yes," Vorak admitted. "I see that now. I saw it when the humans defeated our fleet without massacring us. I saw it when they offered mercy instead of revenge. I saw it when they could have destroyed Centris Prime with the weapon we built to murder them. And they chose not to. They showed us what we should have been all along." The trial lasted 3 weeks. Hundreds of witnesses testified about the council's crimes. Some testimony was hard to hear. Stories of families torn apart, worlds destroyed, species erased from existence. At the end, Vorak was sentenced to life imprisonment. So were most of the council leadership who had participated in the genocide plot or knew about it and did nothing. Some received shorter sentences. A few were acquitted because they had genuinely not known about the worst crimes. The trials were broadcast across the galaxy. For the first time, beings saw their leaders held accountable. It was a strange feeling for many species. They had been taught that the powerful were above the law. Now they saw that no one was above justice. But not everyone accepted the new order. Some council loyalists retreated to the edges of known space, vowing to rebuild their power. Some species that had benefited from the old system resisted the changes. There were terrorist attacks, assassination attempts, and sabotage. Humanity's ghost fleet became the enforcement arm of the new Federation. But they didn't act as conquerors or oppressors. When they stopped violence, they used minimal force. When they protected the new government, they followed strict rules of engagement. "We're not trying to rule the galaxy," Commander Sarah Okonkwo told her officers. "We're trying to give everyone else the chance to rule themselves. That means sometimes we step back, even when we could solve problems faster by taking control." 5 years after the Constitutional Convention, the new Galactic Federation held its first free election for the Federation Council. Every species nominated candidates. Every citizen could vote. Humanity won 3 seats out of 50. Not because of their military power, but because many species trusted them to be fair. Elena Vasquez was elected to one of those seats. At 75 years old, she should have been retired. But the galaxy still needed her wisdom. At the first session of the new Federation Council, she stood to give the opening address. The chamber was full. Delegates from 300 species watched her, some with hope, others with skepticism, all with attention. 28 years ago, Elena began, the old council betrayed humanity. They fabricated evidence, imprisoned us, and planned our genocide. They thought they could make us disappear. They were wrong. She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of delegates from species that had suffered under council rule. But this isn't a story about revenge. It's a story about what happens when people refuse to accept injustice. When I stood in the old council chamber and heard their lies, I could have despaired. When Earth suffered through the dark years, we could have given up. When we discovered the genocide plot, we could have responded with our own genocide. Elena's voice grew stronger, but we didn't. Because humanity learned something important during our history. We learned that violence may win wars, but only justice wins peace. We learned that the powerful have a responsibility to protect the weak, not exploit them. We learned that diversity makes us stronger, not weaker. She gestured to the delegates around her. Look at this chamber. 300 species, 300 different perspectives, cultures, and ideas. The old council feared that diversity. They tried to control it, suppress it, make everyone think the same way. But we celebrate it, because when we work together respecting our differences, we can solve problems that no single species could solve alone. A Velksani delegate stood up. Ambassador Vasquez, humanity saved us. You gave us freedom. But what's to stop you from becoming what the council was? You have the strongest military, the best technology, the most influence. How do we know you won't use that power the way the council did? Elena smiled. It was a good question, an important question. Because we built safeguards into the Constitution. Human military power is subject to Federation oversight. Our technology is being shared with anyone who wants it. Our influence is earned through our actions, not enforced through threats. And if humanity ever tries to dominate others the way the Council did, the same laws we used against the Council can be used against us. She paused, letting that sink in. We wrote the Constitution knowing that humans aren't perfect. We make mistakes. We have our own capacity for cruelty and corruption, so we built a system that can stop us if we go wrong. Because the point isn't to replace one empire with another. The point is to create a galaxy where no species can become an empire. The Velksani delegate sat down, satisfied. Other delegates nodded in agreement. The session continued for hours, debating the first laws of the new Federation. It was messy. Delegates disagreed loudly. Some arguments became heated, but they were settling their differences with words, not weapons, and that made all the difference. After the session ended, Elena stood alone on the observation deck looking out at the stars. Commander Sarah Okonkwo found her there. Tired? Sarah asked. Exhausted, Elena admitted. But we did it. We actually did it. We changed the galaxy. The hard part comes next, Sarah said. Making it last. Making sure the next generation doesn't forget why we fought this war. Elena nodded. That's why I'm writing everything down. The betrayal, the dark years, the war, all of it. Future humans need to remember that freedom is fragile. It has to be defended. And it has to be shared or it doesn't mean anything. A ship approached the station. It was from Velksar, and it carried a delegation led by Sora. She was even older now in the final years of her life. But she had requested this meeting. Elena and Sarah met her in a private conference room. Sora moved slowly, supported by younger Velksani, but her mind was still sharp. Ambassador Vasquez, Sora said. Commander Okonkwo, I wanted to thank you before I die. My ancestors fought for freedom and lost. For 2,000 years, my people lived in chains. You broke those chains. You gave us back our history, our dignity, our future. She reached into her robes and pulled out a small crystal. It glowed with a soft blue light.